Well, thank you, Ted, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is simultaneously the most difficult and exhilarating evening in my life. Obviously, most exhilarating for this phenomenal honor. Most disappointing because my health simply will not allow me to be there. Trust me when I tell you I tried to make it work in every possible way. And it's not just the virus in my case, but this will have to do. I'd like to thank Joe Costella for being gracious enough to help me produce this little thank you video as an acceptance for what I consider to be the greatest honor that our sport can bestow. First of all, let me thank the selectors, all the amazing work that Greg Sharp has done to perpetuate the history of our sport. Obviously, Steve Gibbs has been one of the most instrumental and key people in promoting and continuing this business of anybody. Harry Hibbler has been a part of this business since the very beginning. Ted Jones has been instrumental in pretty much every area that Steve Gibbs, Greg Sharp, and Harry Hibbler have not. And then, of course, there is our host tonight, the one and only Don Garlits. When I got that call from Don 6 or 7 months ago, it was one of the few times I've ever been speechless. But in this particular case, I still have to ask, why me? Actually, I asked that question of Don Garlits, and in Don Garlits' typical fashion, he said, for everything. When I asked him what he meant by everything, he said, you've done a variety of things in the sport, and we want to acknowledge those things. And for that, I am, once again, nearly speechless. But I said nearly. In this particular case, I would like to explain my situation. Apparently, they've brought me into this group, this incredible group of 312 people that have been named for the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame for a variety of reasons. I guess for a kid who was born in Amish country in Pennsylvania to end up in this position is beyond words. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 12 years old. I wanted to be a writer for the drag racing magazines. I had already been bitten by the bug and knew that that's where I wanted to spend my life. My earliest journalistic heroes are, interestingly, people that have already been are very familiar with people that are in this room. The great Jim McCraw, a writer for Superstock magazine. John Asher, who wrote for just about every magazine, were my journalistic heroes. And I based my journalism career dreams on being like them. I sent a lot of manuscripts when I was a kid to different magazines just from the hopes that they'd read it, not that they would hire me. But I did go to college with the hopes of one day graduating with a journalism degree and working for Superstock magazine. Well, in 1977, at the AHRA Gateway Nationals in St. Louis, Missouri, I had the chance to meet a guy who had been the recipient of many of my manuscripts, named Jim Kelly, who, of course, is an inductee in the Hall of Fame and is the man who gave me my break, as he did so many dozens of others in our business. Jim Kelly hired me at the age of 17. I quit college because I got the job that I was going for. Little did I know that it didn't pay enough to eat day to day, but that didn't matter. I started with Superstock magazine when I was 17 years old. I ended up being with that book for 27 years. I ended up having journalism pieces published in 59 different titles, thousands of manuscripts in different areas. That kind of stuff goes back to my 10th grade English teacher, Vivian Showalter, who instilled in me the ability to write and pay attention to writing skills. In any case, my writing career is one end of this. I later became an announcer. I fell into the announcing game the way every other drag racing announcer fell into the announcing game. I happened to be in the timing tower at the same St. Louis International Raceway in the 1970s, and I had raced, lost early, was standing in the tower with their local announcer, Roger Monroe, who was a great announcer and also an exceptional motorcycle rider. And Roger did the exact same thing to me that he did to so many other people who started announcing. He turned to me and said, I have to take a leak. Here, take over. He handed me the microphone. He went to the restroom. He came out of the restroom. lent an ear to the PA, heard that I was talking, and said, hey, I can go hang out with my friends for an hour or so, which he did, and I announced. I found out it was just like writing, except I can't correct my mistakes immediately. Well, a couple of weeks later, Roger Monroe got an offer to ride for the Vance and Hines Pro Stock Motorcycle team, in which case track operator Phil Trover came up to me and said, I need an announcer. You're an announcer. You announced. And I said, well, I did once. And he says, that's good enough. Well, he offered me $25 a night. And the class in which I was racing paid $50 to win each night and $25 runner-up. And I thought, you know, I'm not doing great in racing. I can get guaranteed runner-up money if I just show up and talk. That was the start of my announcing career. And within a few years, I was announcing the American Hot Rod Association National Event Series. That went on to the National Hot Rod Association National Event Series, which was simultaneous with the AHRA, interestingly. I then went on to United Drag Racers Association and, of course, International Hot Rod Association Racing announcing. That led to television. It was the TV world that basically gave me a much greater scope than I had when I was just announcing at tracks around the country. I started with drag racing television in 1985. My career ended in 2019. Boy, I've cut myself short there. And in that near 40-year period, I ended up doing an awful lot of television shows for something on the order of 60 different networks. In between there was also a little bit of drag racing photography. Back in the earliest days, I had an opportunity to travel with the greatest drag racing photographers and writers the sport has ever known. We all used to be on the road together. When you're 17 years old, you don't have those 17 to 21 year goof off college years with not a care in the world, and instead you're actually driving town to town worrying about how you're going to eat next. We tended to band together. And it's through that fraternity that I was given a break late in life to become a photographer. And when I say become a photographer, I mean be schooled by the best in the absolute art of photography, including all the original film techniques. One of my closest friends, Matt Polito, was the one who took me under his wing, one of the best photographers in the business. And I enjoyed a photography career for about 10 years that resulted in quite a few magazine covers and center spreads and stuff like that. What all this boils down to is the fact that obviously for the vast majority of my life, I've spent every waking moment in drag racing. There have been a tremendous amount of people that have made this life so special. As an announcer who worked at multiple tracks per week for years, I got to spend time with and learn from the greatest promoters this sport has ever known. That ranges from Broadway Bob Metzler, for whom I worked for 2 decades, to John Grivens of Martin, Michigan, to Bob George, to a ton of promoters who made this sport what it is and who really knew what it was to present a happening as opposed to just a drag race. I learned from them the techniques of what to give the fans, what to sell the fans, and how to make money for everybody involved. That indeed is a lost art nowadays, but don't get me wrong, the sport's doing just fine. On the other side of the coin, along with so many people to whom I owe a break or guidance or all of the things that have been given me, is a gentleman who is on the board, a gentleman who has been more than just a business friend, and in fact has been as close to a guiding father figure in my life as anybody, and that is the one and only Ted Jones. Many of you are aware of Ted from the International Hot Rod Association, when in fact his stretch, his reach in this sport is so far greater than just as president of the International Hot Rod Association. It was through him that I learned television. It was through him that I continued an announcing career at a higher level. It was through him that somebody was looking out for me the entire time. When you work for Ted Jones, you become a member of the Ted Jones family. You have Ted as a best friend and a father, and you have Linda Jones as somebody who's going to crack you across the knuckles with a ruler every time you step out of line. Because of both of them, I am who I am. And at this point, standing at the virtual podium of the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame, I guess they did a pretty good job. Most importantly, the one person in my life who I didn't meet at a drag race, Marianne Schultz, who has literally saved my life in bad health situations, who is my closest friend, my confidant, my everything. She is exactly the classic drag racing spouse who never came into this because they love drag racing, but indeed had to accept every single waking hour of drag racing influence in one way or another. I can never thank her enough. And I try every day. She is the ultimate drag racing spouse, and for that very reason, I would like to dedicate this induction to every drag racing spouse who never knew anything about drag racing, but has to put up with this crap 24/7. I would also, of course, have to give every single bit of this to my mother. My parents obviously did something right, and I'm living proof that they did. Nobody enjoys this more than my mother, this whole long trip. She has a lot of friends in this room, and she wishes just as much as me that we could all be there. I also should probably point out in the most serious manner that I have a lot of friends who deserve this more than me. In the case of dedications, I'd like to dedicate this induction to every drag racing fan who ever showed up at the grandstands before the sun rose and stayed there until just before the next sun rose, and then got in their car and drove to another track and did it all over again while paying for the privilege. I'd like to dedicate it to every drag racer who ever got in the truck and headed 500 miles into a 100% guaranteed rain forecast for a race that cost $100 to entry and paid $99 to win. I'd like to dedicate this to every official who worked a 24-hour shift and still just got yelled at. I dedicate it to every track operator who ever put every dime he ever had into the biggest show his track ever produced, and it rained everywhere but the track. But even in debt, he opened up the following week. These are the kind of people that make up the group in this room. There are no other people like the people in drag racing. I am confused by society in its polarization, in its bickering, in its nightmarish constant fighting, when I, like every single person in this room, knows there is a world without that kind of strife. And we are it. Drag racing is the only endeavor I've ever known that cuts across every social strata, across every aspect of humanity, and asks nothing of anybody. Our altar is the ticket booth, and we are all only judged by the win line. There's nothing that needs to be said in drag racing other than you're one of us. I guess in the long run, that's what's being said tonight for me, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. There's one last thing I'd like to address. Many of you are aware that I also drag raced throughout my life. Had a pretty good career drag racing. I had over 110 event wins, won multiple national events, set NHRA world records. You're looking at the only guy who ever set an NHRA world record with a car with an engine less than 100 cubic inches. That was with my good friend Brian Olson, with whom I campaigned a Ford Escort with an engine of under 100 cubic inches. But here's the interesting aspect of my racing that Don Garlits will want me to bring up. In 100+ event wins, I drove around 60 different vehicles. And that's interesting because I owned 2 vehicles that each had more than 20 wins. So you might say, well, why so many cars? Well, when I travel week in and week out for 35 years, I have the opportunity to jump in a rental car and go race. Let's face it, bracket racing allows anything, and that's exactly what I did. For example, if I had a TV show to do at a track on Sunday, I would fly into that town on Friday afternoon, rent a car, go find a drag strip on Friday night, go find another local drag strip on Saturday night, race at both of them, and then go work on Sunday. Well, for many, many years, Don Garlits and I worked on television shows together. And I would show up on Sunday morning for those TV shows, and Don Garlits would greet me first thing in the morning. Did you go race last night? Did you go run the rental car? And I would say, yeah. And he goes, how'd you do? And I'd pull out a trophy, hopefully, and show him the trophy. And he'd go, oh, my God. And he would just run over to Pat Garlits. He'd go, Pat, you won't believe what this man did. Look at that trophy. He won this with a rental car. He's going to a racetrack with a rental car and kicking their butts. He loved more than anybody the fact that when you drive the same car every day of the year, it's basically your car and you get to know it pretty well. I enjoyed more showing Don Garlits those trophies than I think I did winning the races. If nothing else, when I showed Don Garlits the trophy, I didn't have to hurry up and run out of the track before I got my head kicked in. Also, for the last 25 years, I've been involved in a little project. At the beginning of the information age, when the internet came alive and we could indeed access things that we never dreamed we could, I started a project called TerraTrack's Global Authority. Because of the availability of satellite imagery and general information, I went on a quest to find every drag strip ever built. That means locate it, confirm that it was real, and chronicle its existence. I put together a group of 4 people, 2 from Canada, Tom Postuma and Ralph Ryder, and myself and John Paulette, who lives in Virginia. And for the past 25 years, we've spent pretty much every spare working hour, day, literally hunting for drag strips and chronicling that information. The project currently stands at over 4,000 drag strips. The text of the project is currently at 1,250,000 words and 4,000 pages. And that's not counting videos or pictures or artwork. The objective here is to get a copy on the National Archive shelves. It's not going to be for sale because you can't pick up a 4,000-page book. But in any case, that's what I've been doing. And to many people, it's considered a labor of love. To the 4 of us, it's considered imperative that we save drag racing's history accurately. On top of that, I still am involved in drag racing statistics. I am certainly not the only statistician left in this sport who knows stuff all the way back into the 50s and the 40s. There are plenty of them out there, but I'm still working hard at that. Ladies and gentlemen, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for this phenomenal honor. Again, I wish so much I could be there, but I feel in many ways that I am. Thank you all.